Bang! Needs Knives. I'm Jared. My lovely wife Kara is at work, and today's review is the Cold Steel 4max. Now, this thing's pretty awesome, but like usually, there are some bad things here. But I gotta say, this thing's pretty awesome. But let's get into it. First off, I want to thank Joseph for sending me a bunch of knives to check out using my sharpening service and just being awesome to us. Thank you very much for letting me check out some of your knives. Now, this thing's a beast, okay? This thing is a beast. And I know, like, sometimes it's hard to really see how big a knife is, you know, on camera. But I have a large size hand, and you can see, even with me all the way down here, you know, this thing is a beast. So here, let's just do some quick size comparisons just so you can kind of understand the size of this knife. I don't like to do a lot of size comparisons no more, but I'm going to do a few. So here is the XM24. So this is the big hinder, the XM24. And just so you can see the size difference between the 3.5 inch. So this is the XM18 3.5 inch right here. Okay, so you can really see the size difference, and this is a big knife. So compared to the XM18, you can really see the difference. I mean, this is a small knife compared to the 4max. Now, if that really doesn't tell you much, here is the Spyderco Manix XL. And I know you look at it like with the height and everything, how they're kind of similar, but they're nowhere similar. Like, this thing is just a beast compared. I mean, look at that. This thing's a brick compared to it. And then a lot of people know the Bugout. So here is the Benchmade Bugout. And you can really see the big size difference here in this knife. I mean, whew, this thing's a monster. So 10 inches overall, 4-inch blade, 180 thousandths thick blade stock. It is made in Italy, and originally I think they were $329 from like Blade HQ. So it is in 20 CV blade steel, and I'm just going to get right into all the things I do like about it. I did carry it. I did not sharpen it, but I did carry it. I did use it, and I'm going to talk more about what, you know, some of my experiences carrying it here in a second. But beautiful stone washing. I love, love, love this type of stone washing. It really hides a lot of the wear and scratches. G10 is done really nice. And like I said, this is 20 CV. And the G10 is done very, very nicely. Obviously, it's a backlock. We'll get into the action here in a second. Titanium clip, titanium liners, and then a titanium back spacer right here. Now, the spring, the backlock, is steel, and then, you know, the stop pin and everything. But the liners, the back spacer, and the clip are all titanium. Nice big removable thumb studs, and you know, the ergos on this thing being so big and thick, I mean, you can see how thick this thing is. It's very comfortable in the hand. Very, very good ergos. And because of those ergos, it cuts pretty good. First off, I'm going to show you some clips of it just slicing and cutting, and then we'll talk about some more of my experiences that I didn't get to videotape. But it actually cuts pretty good. And now this is going to this is going to relate not with blade geometry, because the blade geometry in, you know, in more or less words, it sucks for a knife, because it's 25 thousandths behind the edge, super thick blade stock. But it cuts very good, and that's because it has such good ergos. And, you know, it does have a good, like, tall flat grind, but it slices pretty good considering. And yeah, you really feeling control of all your cuts, like almost like you're cutting cardboard with a machete or something. So yeah, no issues with the way it cuts or slices. And then we get to the utility cuts, and I'll be damned, this thing actually does do pretty decent utility cuts, considering, because, you know, obviously it's not meant for utility cuts, but holy cow, you can do some utility cuts with it because of the way the ergos are. You can really get a good grip, and when you can get leverage, and this is why I always speak on leverage in ergos, because it's so, so important to your cutting performance. If you can get a good grip and get good pressure and leverage behind your cuts, a knife that doesn't even cut good will cut great. So utility cuts, I'm very happy with the way this thing actually performed. Overwhelmingly surprised with how good it actually cut. Now, let's talk about, because this thing, the tip is so thick. This is something I don't even think twice about chopping, prying, stabbing with. Like, not a second thought. It is designed for chopping and stabbing and stuff. So, you know, I have no problem chopping things and stabbing this into something, and literally 0 damage. Not one. Now, I don't know how the heat treat is on this, but I would imagine it's pretty good. Because I actually did quite a bit of, you know, chopping, and it did just fine. I mean, you wouldn't even tell. Watch this. I bet you I can cut paper right now. Oh, sorry. I mean, you wouldn't even notice that I did anything. Maybe right there a little. Let's see. Nope. Through the belly. Yeah, clean. Also, I want to say I'm very impressed with the sharpening job that was done from the factory. This is the factory edge still. One, it was very sharp. I know I've used it a lot, but it was very, very sharp. It's still very sharp. It's still holding up very good, but just a good quality belt sharpening from the factory. Great job. And the evenness on the grind is very even. They did an incredible job with the blade and with the sharpening on this. Now, I did bring it up. I carried it for basically 2 full days. I carried it around other than that, you know, but I really carried it for 2 full days. And 2 of the days, or actually both days, I had to go up in the attic. We had a leak. And when I went up in the attic, the first time I forgot I had it. And I didn't realize till I got back down. And I was like, holy cow. I was in the tightest spots. Like, if you know how an attic goes when a roof goes down to the soffits, you know, like down to the edge, like where your gutter would be and stuff, it gets very tight in an attic. So, you know, being in those tight areas and trying to stay on the beam or the 2x4s, you know, and the trusses and stuff, it gets tight and frustrating. But I had a Formex on me the whole damn time. Didn't even realize it until I got back down. Well, then the second time I had it on me, and I had it on me because I was going back up there, because I thought I might have to pry some stuff. Or cut some stuff too. So I did wind up, when I was up there, I did have to cut something. I did have to pry a little bit. Very light duty prying. I wouldn't have worried about it with any knife, but you know, obviously Formex, bring that. So it was basically some plastic, a plastic screen. Anyways, doesn't matter. The point is, worked just fine. Pried it just fine, no issues. You have so much leverage that it doesn't even feel like you're prying when you are prying, because it's, you know, you have so much leverage. And, you know, I say this comment a lot, you know, like, and let me just say, this makes sense. It makes sense for this blade to be on this knife. And this is why I can't knock this knife for being built the way it is, because it makes sense. Now, if this grind and this thickness behind the edge was on the Bugout, then no, it does not make sense. You can't get leverage behind those type of cuts. It doesn't make sense. But in this case, it does. Now, I always make this, you know, like this reference. If my blade is thicker and stronger, or should I say thicker and bigger than my pry bar that I, you know, work with, that I pry 2x4s with, well, then I think it'll be just fine prying a little bit. Like, I'm not saying, because the heat treat is different, so it's not like you're going to be prying 2x4s off the wall, but light duty prying is okay. It's not, you know, it's okay. And some knives are built for that, like this one. This one's absolutely built for something like that with 0 issues. Now, extensive prying or anything like that, yeah, use your pry bar. But for little tasks, I mean, shit, why have a Formex if you don't use it, right? You don't buy a Formex, you don't carry a Formex to do, like, to cut your recycling. You don't get it to cut the strings off of your wife's dress or whatever, right? Maybe some of you guys do, I don't know. But my point is there's a reason why this knife's built like this. This knife's built like a brick house, and, you know, and it makes sense because the grind and the geometry mixed with the handle and the ergos, it like the triad lock. So let's get into the triad lock really quick. So, strongest lock that we know of right now. I'm not sure if it's stronger than the shark lock or not, but, you know, without arguing about it, let's say it's the strongest, if not one of the strongest. I think it's pretty well known it's the strongest. So it's so strong, this lock. Like, look at this damn stop pin. Holy cow. Ha! Talk about a stop pin, right? Now, this right here, this is the back lock, obviously, right? This is going to settle down into this groove right here. So, and this groove is well machined. I mean, very, very well machined. So it's going to drop down in there in between the stop pin and the tang of the blade. Bang. It is so locked up, rock solid. I mean, no play whatsoever. It's so solid. And so to put a lock that's this strong on a knife, it makes sense for you to want, because the breaking point, where's the breaking point on this knife? It's going to be the blade. The lock's not what's going to fail. It's going to be the blade. And even Demko said that. Andrew Demko, you know, the designer, he said that, you know, all their testings, or I'm not going to say all because I can't speak for them, but most of their testings are where it fails is at the blade. The blade snaps. The lock doesn't fail. So the stronger the blade, the stronger the knife. In this sense, if you're going to talk about like hanging something from the spine of the knife and seeing how much weight it can hold, it's going to come down to the blade. If the blade is super duper crazy strong, well then the lock and the whole thing is going to be super duper strong. So the thickness of the spine is going to have a lot to do with that, and, you know, the geometry of the taper. Anyways, so let's talk about the action. So the action, I mean, it is a big knife, a tri-lock. You can definitely, let's see if I can reverse flick it. You can reverse flick it if you have strong reverse flicking skills. So, but it is a heavy blade, and thumb flicking it, you know, like you want to get your good grip, you know, down, and then you kind of give it a little flick of the wrist. But I can actually get it without flicking the wrist, or at least not much. The slow roll is pretty satisfying. You do have to get around this little hump right here. We'll talk more about that hump in a second, but get your finger on top or behind. Bam. You know, it's pretty satisfying. It is a big swoop. Like, I say this sometimes when it's just a complete circle, it's very satisfying. In this case, it is a big swoop, so it's not going to be as satisfying, but it's a giant knife, so it just makes sense. Now, the action is really good. Now, you're going to want to put your finger right here, right basically up underneath this scoop, hitting a lock, because then your finger is going to land in this unsharpened choil area, or the blade is going to land right there on your finger. Then you can go like that. Now, obviously, you can two-hand it, but if you want to one-hand it, you can also swing it forward, and then before it touches you, move it out of the way and go like that. But you don't want to do it like up front or down here or anything like that. Like, you don't want to go like this and unlock it. Bam, there goes your finger. Make sure it's pushed right up there, just like that. You just hold your hand like that, and you can stop the blade. It'll land right there in the choil area, and you can shut it. So there is a great way to open this and close this with one hand. The clip, how does it carry? So I want to go back into that attic deal. First off, I just want to say the clip works fine. There is quite a bit hanging out of your pocket. It does work in the pocket and out of the pocket for a brick. Obviously, you have a big old heavy knife. I'm going to write the weight down on the screen right now because I don't know the weight. I don't really care about weight of a knife, but you guys might. So there's the weight. Now, the carrying it in the pocket, obviously you have a big knife, but obviously I said I forgot that I had this in my pocket going into an attic. I climbed in there. Like, I had a ladder that went so far, I had to pull myself up into the attic. And, you know, obviously I didn't think about it before I went up there. Like, oh man, I should, you know, switch my knives. I didn't think that, so I forgot I was carrying a Cold Steel 4MAX, which is crazy to think of. Maybe I was just thinking about a lot of stuff, but it actually doesn't carry bad at all. It carries just fine. I had no problem carrying it. Yes, it's a beast. Yes, it's a big knife. Yes, you're going to notice it, but you know, you can also forget about it too. But yeah, it's a noticeable big ass knife in your pocket. Now, when I did notice, okay, when I was up in the attic, now the second time, so I'm talking about the second time when I went up there and I knew I had it and I brought it for a reason. I was using it, right? Well, I'm in such tight spots. Getting it out of the pocket was okay, but I couldn't get it back in my pocket. Just my legs were so contoured. Now, if it was a smaller knife, if it would have been, you know, a Benchmade 940 or something, yeah, it would have been easy to get in my pocket. But it just, my pants and my legs were like so tight, like down in a corner, I just couldn't wedge it in there. So I had to wait till I moved out of the way, stood up, and then put it back in my pocket. Not a big deal. And sometimes, you know, that happens with any knife. Sometimes you're just contoured in the wrong way. You got to wait till you stand back up. Anyways, next thing. You know what? Let's talk about some bad. So, couple things. One, nice T10 pivot. What are we talking about with T6s on a knife like this? I don't know what they're thinking, but come on. Look at this thing. And then it's pinned. So these are pinned from this side. So the only screws are going to be from this side. I usually don't like that. I'd usually rather see double screws because if this strips, then you're screwed. I'm sure they'll replace the pin regardless. My point is they should have used bigger hardware because then you have less likely of it to strip. Now, I will say the hardware is done good. I mean, it's good quality hardware. The T6 fits in there really good. Same thing with the T10 pivot. But, you know, it's just you have less likely of a chance of it stripping out with bigger hardware. Anyways, next thing. You know, and I already said about the pins, you know, and it looks like it's a reversible pocket clip. I forgot to say that, which it should be because it is ambidextrous. Now, next thing, I don't know why there would be a lanyard here, and I don't know why they wouldn't scoot this up a little bit, because even if, you know, I wouldn't put a lanyard on something like this. Maybe somebody would. Maybe you could use it to tie to a spear. I don't know. I'm just talking crap. But this pocket clip would have been cool, just moved up a little bit. It is cool. When you have, you know, so much hanging out of the pocket, it's one thing, but when it's also this wide, it's another thing. I mean, you have this much hanging out of your pocket. I mean, come on. Like, if they would have screwed the clip up, it would only be like this much hanging out and then not use the lanyard hole. Regardless, next thing, I can see daylight through it. You know, the fit and finish. Let me just say, this thing is chamfered beautifully. Everything is contoured so nicely. I really like all the chamfering, the contouring, and the jimping. This actually is functional jimping, but you can see daylight through it. I don't like that. Now, back here, it's tight, but right here up front, and on one side, it's pretty tight. On the other side, it's not. So it's tight on this top side, but then, you know, you can see it right there, like, you know, whatever. It's not that big of a deal. It's still rock solid of a knife, but, you know, it just, you know, it would be cool if it was a little tighter and there wasn't the seam. Now, maybe they need that to have this room, but I don't think they do. I think that they still could have pulled it off, or maybe not. I don't know. You know, I didn't build it, but the jimping back here is functional and it does work, and it doesn't, you know, the gap doesn't really create too much of an issue. Maybe if you're in dust and dirt, but next thing. Okay, so this plunge grind, this isn't that big of a deal, but I would have rather seen the Spyderco plunge grind, and this is what I mean. This is the Spyderco Para 2, PM2. You see how the plunge grind just drops from here straight to the grind? So now when I sharpen it and I go up the blade, like I'm gonna have to on this one, it won't create a smile. It'll just be just like this. This one's been sharpened, you know? Anyways, or like any of the other Spydercos. In this case, they have a taper. So the plunge grind starts here, it plunges down to here. So now when sharpening up the blade, you're gonna have to make sure and be very careful not to hit this plunge. Now, if you do, is it that big of a deal? No, it's not, but it is a thing. And a lot of people don't like to look at smiles on their knife where it looks like that, you know, or, you know, it has that smile. A lot of people don't like to look at that. Sometimes it's unavoidable. And in this case, you know, after 3 sharpenings or a few sharpenings, it is going to start going up this thing, and you're going to have to be very careful to try to go up the blade when sharpening and not to hit that. Most likely you're gonna. Now with a clamp system, you can take off the thumb stud, so that's pretty cool. You can clamp it, or you can just clamp it because I think you can get past it anyways. This pinhole. The pinhole was originally for knives that they had like the lanyard and they had the pin to basically turn them into a fixed blade. But this one, I don't think it fits. I think it's just like reminiscent. I think they put that there just to be like kind of like it's their thing, you know, because when I look at it, it doesn't look like if I put a pin in there that it would, yes, if it failed, it would stop it, you know, but other than that, it's not tight. So if I put a pin straight in all the way across, you can see there's a distance there between that pin and the blade. So I guess you still could put a pin in there, and if it did fail, it would stop about right there, you know, if the pin was in there. But I feel like the pin should hold it in place and stop it from even failing that much. But what do I know? All in all, fantastic knife. I love this thing. I think this thing's a beast. No weight relief. The stone washing's done really good. The G10 is great quality. Fit and finish is good most of the way, aside from, you know, the tightness right there. But the edge retention was great. The blade, I mean, this thing's a beast, man. So yeah, there you guys go. I love you guys. Ooh, thanks for watching. Thanks, Joseph. Peace.